How's it going, guys? Welcome back to my channel and time for another episode of Luke's Reviews, a Speedy Reviews edition. Now, if you've watched some of these videos on my channel, you'll understand that I see a lot of films over the course of the year. And for one reason or another, some of the films I don't decide to do an entire video based upon them. So instead what I do is I take those films, I give you my short, brief, to the point reviews in almost like bite-sized chunks. In this video, I'm going to be talking about films like Host, Project Power, Never, Rarely, Sometimes, Always, and The One and Only Ivan, just to name a few.
Visualize us sitting in a circle. Spirit, we invite you to use us to pass on any communication. Is there anyone there? Please come forth.
What was that? Amy, was that you?
I heard it.
I heard something.
I think there's something here.
Do you see that?
So Host is this cool little horror film available on Shudder, which is basically a horror-oriented Netflix. It's just shy of an hour long. It's filmed all on Zoom, and also filmed and set in the middle of lockdown from earlier in the year. A group of friends are looking to take part in a seance, and lo and behold, shit hits the fan, and each friend starts to become haunted by a demon. Now, it's pretty incredible how the filmmakers were able to come up with an idea that fits in so well with our current condition, but also be able to make a horror film that genuinely feels scary. Visually, it borrows from films like Unfriended, where the mechanics of the video chat style play into certain story beats and scares within the film, but then that just adds to the overall immersivity. The actors all do a bang-up job. In the early scenes, the dialogue feels very natural, they're talking over one another, and considering that they're unknown performers, they really make it seem effortless. Director Rob Savage has clearly gone for broke, and mostly it's paid off. I was worried that the shorter length would end up making the film seem rushed, but it's paced very well, and the scares are handled effectively. There's a sinister tension seeping in almost from the start, and when things begin to get nuts, and with that atmosphere already set in place, Savage builds up the tension nicely, and it results in proper and impactful jump scares. Throw in some disturbing imagery and meticulously crafted framing and editing, making you question the smallest of background movements, and you have an easy to watch, tense and taut horror that feels very timely and appropriate. Overall, I'm going to give Host a 7.5 out of 10.
Tomasz Giemza. Studiuję prawo i jestem na stażu w moderowaniu social media.
Beata Santorska.
Wiem, kim pani jest.
Masz próbny miesiąc. Gdzie pracujesz?
W internetach.
Fala hejtu, jak na mnie spadła, to ile ludzi się ode mnie odwróciło przed moim życiem.
Będzie premia.
Dobra robota.
Now, one of my New Year's resolutions was to start watching a wide variety of international movies, and I saw this film advertised on Netflix. The Hater is an incredibly tense and deeply disturbing psychological thriller that plays into a lot of fears happening within our wider political climate. The main character, Tomáš, is hired by a secretive company that clients contact to dismantle businesses and corporations by spreading fear and lies across social media. Having been scorned by those around him, Tomáš takes this newfound power to dangerous extremes as he begins to interfere with a mayoral election. The concept of fake news and fear-mongering isn't exactly uncommon in today's day and age, and The Hater perfectly illustrates just how terrifying it can become. Director Jan Komasa does a remarkable job at helming a film with such a profound message at its core and never letting up on how messed up events can get. I'm probably going to butcher this name, but Maciej Mushalowski is phenomenal in this. He starts out as a guy struggling to keep his life together and ends the film as a truly sinister force, a man who has fallen so far down the rabbit hole his moral compass has disintegrated. Komasa does a lot to keep the film moving along at a good pace, although I think it could have done with about 10 minutes being shaved off. And also, it's worth mentioning that the climax of this film is highly distressing, and easily the most uncomfortable I've been watching any film this year. The Hater is by no means an easy watch given the subject matter, but one that will have you captivated as soon as you push play. I'm going to give The Hater an 8.5 out of 10.
Unlock your potential with world-famous magicians.
Andy Duckerman is back, baby! Hey, where are you going?
How are you?
I'm right here.
It's been too long. I thought you'd given up magic.
I'm doing private shows around the world for super important people. Whatever. My bunk is gonna beat you, just like I did every summer when we were kids.
This is ridiculous.
You know it's ridiculous. How bad you're gonna lose.
Judging from the trailer, this was the sort of film I feared from Disney+. Cheap, sloppily made garbage that would usually be pumped out straight to TV, but now getting all the bells and whistles on a fancy new streaming service. And Magic Camp is pretty cheap. It is fairly sloppily made. But is it bad? Not really. By no means is this breaking the mold of the family genre. In fact, it fits in snugly to a very generic mold. It's basically about a group of kids who go off to Magic Camp for the summer, get stuck with a deadbeat teacher who is caught up in his glory days rather than waking up and seeing his own failures, but have to put together a routine to determine a winner. There is nothing remotely all that special about Magic Camp. The actors do a so-so job, but all of their characters are one-dimensional with thin motivations, and all of the internal feelings are constantly being explained so the screenwriters can spoon-feed every morsel of information to the audience. However, it has heart. Despite the characters feeling underdeveloped, there is clearly a conceited effort to make them endearing. Even if the overall message can be summed up with the whole "the magic was around us all the time" cliche, and whether it's because Disney have slapped their whimsy all over it, Magic Camp is a decent, enjoyable, and easy to watch film that would be perfect to sit the kids down to kill 90 minutes. Overall, I'm going to give Magic Camp a 6 out of 10.
If there was a pill
Hungry for that money, I'm coming to devour.
that could give you 5 minutes
Spit it so they get it. I'm embedded with the power.
of pure power,
I'm embedded with the power.
would you take it?
Project Power is a new-ish film available on Netflix. It's kind of a superhero action movie, but somewhat grounded in an almost seedy underbelly of New Orleans. Basically, there's this pill that is making the rounds across the city that gives the user 5 minutes of superpowers. Anything from being bulletproof, super strength, or using your bones as weapons. And in amongst this are 3 characters. Jamie Foxx is a father on the hunt for his daughter, who has been kidnapped by the shady organisation linked to the pill. Joseph Gordon-Levitt is a no-nonsense cop who uses the pill to get answers no matter the consequences. And then there's Dominique Fishback, who gets caught up in the chaos. Given the cool premise, I was hoping this movie would have done a bit more, but instead it just settles for being fine. It's pretty generic, the story isn't exactly playing with new ingredients here, the performances are all okay. JGL is probably the most interesting of the bunch, being a bulletproof cop in a criminal-ridden world, and when the action scenes come, they're cool. It's a bit crowded, and directors Henry Joost and Ariel Schulman do occasionally lean on shaky cam, but it's certainly explosive, and if you're after a straightforward action film with some cool visuals that you can throw on, and not really care all too much, Project Power fits the bill. I'm going to give Project Power a 6.5 out of 10.
I'm Kurt. Hey guys. Hey guys. What's up, guys? We're gonna inject this right on the label.
Does this water have like a taste to it?
Airtight. Well, watertight.
If you're not documenting yourself, you just don't exist.
The mouthfeel on this? Otherworldly.
Now, I saw Spree back when cinemas first reopened. Remember those times where cinemas were open? It was a new release and the concept looked pretty interesting. Joe Keery, aka Steve from Stranger Things, plays a dude named Kurt who has a job as a spree driver, basically Uber or Lyft, but also is desperate to make a name for himself as a social media influencer. His obsession with making this become a reality quickly devolves into killing his passengers in horrifying ways, all whilst on a live stream, in order to gain the fame he craves. There's no denying, this movie's f***ed. It's mean-spirited, has a warped and bleak sense of humour, and is not an easy watch. Keery is deeply unsettling in this role. He does an incredible job in portraying a legitimately unstable psychopath who will pose and act for the cameras whilst drilling into a person's skull. He'll drive over bodies to the tune of the Gummy Bear song. But Spree isn't just glorified torture porn. There is a message, albeit one with the subtlety of a brick. Spree is commenting on the image of being an influencer and how dangerous it can become. And what struck me is that, well, aside from the murderous rampage Kurt embarks upon, looking at his behaviour in social situations, his urge to be followed no matter what, people like this actually exist. They have no discernible goals or ambitions other than to have as many people following them as possible, and will go to ridiculous lengths to acquire this. Unfortunately for the film, it does fall off the rails towards the end, and bizarrely, given that the film is all presented through either live stream footage, YouTube video footage, or security camera footage, there's a musical score. I felt like that could have been taken out. On the whole though, Spree is uncomfortable, eye-opening, and Joe Keery does an excellent job. I'm going to give Spree a 7 out of 10.
So, Alice, how would you describe your relationship with Jesus?
Welcome. You've got mail.
Mom?
Fine.
Just fine.
So, from one Stranger Things alumni to another, Natalie Dyer stars as Alice, a young girl who attends a deeply religious high school and goes away for the weekend to visit a religious retreat with her local church and school. However, fully submerged in adolescence, Alice begins to explore herself sexually, all the while fearful of what it may mean in the eyes of her friends, teachers, and God. For those who are devoutly religious, I'm not entirely sure how you might feel about this film. I didn't find it in any way slanderous towards Christianity and the whole notion of sinning, but at the same time it's not exactly given the most positive outlook on how some Christian beliefs are practiced. And at times that direct contrast to the ideas of sinning and resisting temptation to have a bit of a rub and tug often produces some good-natured laughs. Natalie Dyer is great, she's understated and brilliantly manages to portray her inner conflict very well. It does, however, suffer in its length. Initially, this movie started out as a 10-minute short film, which I've since seen, and I feel like Main's ambition suited a shorter length rather than feature length. At times, Yes God Yes does have some filler aspects that don't really add much to the plot, but rather are there just to bulk the film out to an 80-minute runtime. I'd rather the film either just went for it now it had been given more opportunities, or simply stick to the shorter, more condensed format. So I'm going to give Yes God Yes a 5.5 out of 10.
In 500 years, no one has ever escaped. You're not going anywhere. It's the tower! So stupid.
Give this to Janan!
Right. Firstly, every single bit of promotional material has lied to you about this film. The trailers, the posters. For starters, it can't even seem to make up its mind to actually choose a title. But you look at it, and it paints a picture of a long-awaited team-up between Arnold Schwarzenegger and Jackie Chan, a ginormous tease for action fans out there. They're front and centre in every poster, they're the main focus of the trailers, but for the actual film, their screen time roughly equates to less than a quarter. They share a fight scene in the opening stages of the film, and then they vanish. Also, if I'm reading the cast list correctly, I'm pretty sure Schwarzenegger is supposed to be playing Captain Hook. Instead, the Iron Mask is actually somewhat of a sequel, also starring Jason Fleming and Charles Dance, but this time round it's some sort of swashbuckling adventure fantasy epic produced in tandem with Russian and Chinese studios about a cartographer who goes to China and there's a face-swapping witch who wants to control a dragon whose eyelashes make tea. This is one colossal train wreck. The direction is borderline embarrassing, the writing is painful with some of the worst dialogue all year, the performances across the board are laughably bad, as well as unbelievably terrible dubbing over the top to help.
So it must be you. Are you the Russian Tsar?
Of course I am.
The CGI is appalling, looking like it hasn't even been rendered properly and still unfinished. Judging it purely from a filmmaking stance, it's a complete and utter disaster. But the chaos and horrifying nature of it all actually makes it somewhat entertaining in an almost so bad it's good situation. Additionally, the one aspect that director Oleg Stepchenko does manage to succeed in are the action sequences. They're wholly ridiculous, but the choreography is reasonably well executed, and it has the odd moment of badassery. Look, it is a stupendously stupid film, but in a roundabout way, that ends up being part of its charm. So, against all of my better judgment, I'm going to give The Iron Mask a 3 out of 10.
I didn't see you at school today.
I went to the doctor.
What's wrong?
Girl problems.
Don't you ever just wish you were a dude?
All the time.
This is the most magical sound you will ever hear.
Never, Rarely, Sometimes, Always is written and directed by Eliza Hittman, a rising star on the independent scene, and her new film is about a 17-year-old girl called Autumn, played by Sydney Flanagan, who discovers that she's pregnant as a result of an abusive relationship. The film details this discovery, followed by her journey to terminate the pregnancy. This is far from an easy watch, but it is one I strongly recommend. Hittman's direction is beautifully understated, but also incredibly harrowing at the same time. Dealing with sensitive subject matters such as these is a minefield for any storyteller, but Hittman does such a spectacular job at not leaning into any cliches or formulaic material and keeping her story raw, genuine, and above all else, emotional. Much of that emotion also has to do with a star-making turn by Sydney Flanagan, who, I believe this is actually her acting debut, or at least it says so online. She is remarkable in this film, once again, very understated, magnificently conveying the fear and confusion that a 17-year-old would feel in this situation. In one of the most heartbreaking scenes in the film, Hittman opts for this static one-take shot as Autumn explains her sexual history and her abusive relationship to the counselor. And so, by staying put for that entire scene and watching Autumn finally break down, it's devastating to see unfold. Some will view it as a bit of a slow burn and say that nothing really happens a lot of the time, and I can see where they're coming from, but because of the tender and well executed nature of the film and a sensational debut by Flanagan, I once again very strongly recommend Never, Rarely, Sometimes, Always. So I'm going to give Never, Rarely, Sometimes, Always an 8 out of 10.
Everett, it's Faye. The sound came through the board and interrupted your radio show.
What a sound.
What's going on, Everett?
Experimental sci-fi is my bread and butter, and from reading the concept of this film, which is available currently on Amazon Prime Video, I was basically putty in this film's hands. Set in an old-school American town in the 1950s as a radio DJ and switchboard operator, join forces to investigate a series of strange noises and occurrences across their town that may indicate the existence of extraterrestrial life. Considering this was also a debut for director Andrew Patterson, I was all ears for whatever this film had to throw my way. And the first thing anyone watching this movie will notice is its abundance of style and creativity in regard to its direction. Patterson has crafted a beautiful looking movie that perfectly encapsulates the time period, and alongside his cinematographer helms some amazing tracking shots, intricate one-takes, and gorgeous imagery. It is, by all accounts, a stunning directorial debut. But sadly, The Vast of Night is a disappointing case of style over substance. It may look wonderful, but beneath there is very little to match. The screenplay is really weak, lacking any form of character motivation or development, and it is incredibly dialogue heavy, and unfortunately, there isn't any of that spark to maintain the investment. There are long, drawn-out conversations of very little value performed by reasonably talented actors, but lacking in any sense of urgency, interest, or wit. These conversations sap any energy the direction previously had, grinding the film to a screeching halt. It never picks up, and by the hour mark, I was simply willing it to hurry up and finish. And it's such a shame because this had so much potential to be something so exciting. But it's just that the screenplay hasn't got the same creativity as Patterson's direction. So overall, I'm going to give The Vast of Night a 4.5 out of 10.
Why do they want an angry gorilla anyway? You're a silverback. He terrifies humans.
You're not terrifying. Who's that?
My sister.
Where's your sister now?
I don't remember.
Memories never leave us. They just get out of reach.
Imagine walking into an ice cream parlor. Hundreds and hundreds of flavors to choose from, and you settle on vanilla. That's basically what the one and only Ivan is. Vanilla. It's not bad. It won't be a waste of time. It's just safe. Mostly unimpressive. And there are lots of better options available. It's based on a true story of a gorilla named Ivan who was rescued from poachers and raised by an American family. He ends up the headline attraction of a circus located in a shopping mall where he suddenly becomes fond of painting. Eventually, we soon begin to realize that Ivan longs to be free. Kids will probably have a good time with this. It's wholesome, easygoing, and accessible for the youngsters, whereas the adults, there's worse. You could be watching Artemis Fowl instead. Like I said, it's very to the point, there's nothing remotely original about it, and for a lot of the time, I wasn't all that emotionally invested. Sam Rockwell was an interesting choice for Ivan, but he's okay. Angelina Jolie clearly rocked up for the easy paycheck and Scarpa's 20 minutes into the film. Brooklyn Prince was actually quite charming as the voice of a baby elephant named Ruby. And of course, look, Bryan Cranston is good whatever you put him in. There are plenty of worse ways to spend 90 minutes, and even though at points it gets pretty wobbly, it does stick the landing for a sweet ending. And so I'm going to give the one and only Ivan a 5 out of 10. So those were my thoughts on those films. Let me know, have you seen any of these films and what did you think? And as I'm sure some of you are aware, we are currently on the road to 300 subscribers. So if you are watching this video, you have enjoyed yourself, but you are not yet subscribed, what are you doing? Please click that subscribe button and I promise you, you will not regret it. Thanks for watching. If you have enjoyed this video and you'd like to see more, please make sure that you click that like button and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. All the links to my social media accounts, my Facebook, Twitter, Instagram and my letterbox are all in the description below. And if you haven't liked the video, what are you still doing here?